Hello everyone, it's your IELTS tutor Jack, and welcome back to another episode of the IELTS Plus English podcast. Today's topic is a serious one. Crime and punishment is actually a topic I really enjoy. You know, when looking at Netflix or YouTube videos, I do enjoy real crime. So, you know, perhaps that will help me today. If you need help, don't forget to go to www.jacks-english.com for your free podcast handout, which contains all of today's episode's questions and 10 vocabulary or expressions connected to the topic. If you're in Korea, come and check Naver Cafe, which is Yonguk Yongor Jack's English, and become part of the community there. So let's not waste time. Let's go straight into part one. We'll do part one and part two as usual. And I think I'm going to do something a little different for part three today. So we'll look at that a little bit later. Part one, question one, is your country a safe country? I am from England and I would say that it's a relatively safe country, not great. It really depends on where you live. If you live in the inner city, like in London and some parts of London, some parts of Birmingham, it can be quite dangerous. There are assaults, stabbings, various types of crime, vandalism. But if you live in the countryside, generally you can avoid that type of behavior, that type of crime. Okay, another part one, and then we'll move on to part two. So, what do you think the most common crime in your country is? The most common crime, to be honest, I have absolutely no idea. But from my personal experience, I know a lot of my friends and colleagues committed the crime drink driving. This is where, of course, you drink alcohol and drive somewhere. And, you know, when I played golf, a lot of people would finish their golf, have a drink and drive home. So I would say that that is a very common type of crime. So straight on to part two. 2 minutes on the clock. Let's just get that prepared. And tell me about a time you broke a rule. Oh dear. Okay, this will be interesting. And nothing's coming to my head, but probably it would be something related to school. So yeah, let's go ahead with that. I'd like to tell you about a time that I broke a rule at school. When I was young, when I went to high school, of course, you have to go to school every day. It's mandatory. But when I got into the sixth form, which is when you're 17 and 18, I just skipped a lot of classes. It wasn't the whole time, but there was a particular period where I just kind of realized, what's the point in going to school? So I went through this period of skipping a lot of class. Let me tell you a little more about this rule that I broke. So, as I said, you do have to go to class, and there's a registration period at the start of class. And I would come to school in the morning, register for school, but then I would go out before I had to attend any classes. I remember clearly coming home is sort of a 20-minute walk home. On the way home, it was sort of 9:30. I'd pick up a frozen pizza from the shop, go home, and I'd have that for lunch a little bit later. The problem was the teachers did notice in the end, and they caught me going home, and I got punished. It wasn't actually a very severe punishment, and I think that's because I was 17 or 18. So the punishment was to serve detention, which means I had to stay after school for about an hour and a half, and I can't remember. I think I had to write an essay or something like that, so not a big deal. But so in my opinion, it wasn't a serious crime that I committed, or it wasn't a serious rule, but one that I look back at now and think that was a silly thing to do. Okay, I did do that. it was true. There was a period in sixth form, which is when, as I said, it's when you're 17 or 18 in high school. And I did skip a lot of class and I did eat pizza and it was wonderful. But it was a stupid thing to do. And I learnt my lesson. So, of course, this kind of question is pretty easy because you can draw on your experience. Now let's move on to part 3. I haven't prepared these, but I want you to try something with me now. When I answer a part 3 question, I have 4 sections. You've got direct answer, explain, example, conclude. Direct answer, explain, example, conclude. I consistently do this. What I want you to do is, while you're listening, listen for those 4 sections. The conclusion is optional, so I may or may not do that, but let's see how we go. Okay, first question. What is the best way for police to keep neighbourhoods safe? I think the best way for police to keep neighbourhoods safe is to have a presence in the neighbourhood. What I mean is, police should have at least a few policemen or women patrolling the neighbourhood and showing that they are there, making sure criminals know that there's a police presence. In England, you can spend a lot of time in neighbourhoods. I remember from my childhood this is true, and you just don't see a police presence. This means that you feel like you can commit a crime and get away with it. So I would say that the best way to keep neighbourhoods safe is to have a police presence. Did you hear the 4 sections? It was pretty clear. I tried to show sort of pauses in between. So hopefully you could hear how I constructed that answer. Let's do another. What do you think makes people commit acts of violent crime? I think boredom makes people commit a lot of acts of crime. Of course, it depends on the type of crime. I'm talking more about vandalism, sort of petty crimes that are not so serious. The ones that come to my mind are, like, as I said, vandalism, so painting on walls or destroying property, maybe stealing things, causing trouble around the neighborhood. I often saw this when I was in high school. I had a lot of classmates that were bored. There was nothing to do. There was no clubs to join. So not my friends personally, but I did know people that would commit these kind of petty crimes in the neighborhood through boredom. So yeah, I would say boredom is the main cause of this kind of crime. Now, I've made a mistake here. I don't know if I read this correctly, or maybe I didn't even read this, but it said, what do you think makes people commit acts of violent crime? So my answer is useless, but of course I just missed the word violent. At least I talked on the topic of crime, but I would change my answer if I had noticed the word violent. So apologies for that, but I hope you heard the 4 sections again. Now, number 3 of part 3, let's make sure I read this properly. Do you think that video games encourage young people to commit crimes? Okay, I'm clear, I heard it, I understood. Yes, I think video games can cause young people to commit crimes. There's a lot of violence in these games, and very often when you're seeing so much violence on a day-to-day basis, it normalizes that thing. So in this case, it normalizes violence. It makes it seem like a kind of day-to-day thing and almost acceptable. I used to play a game called GTA, Grand Theft Auto, which is where you literally attack people, you break into their cars, you deal with drugs and gangs and all these awful things. It's a wonderful game. It's a very deep game with an incredible world, but you get so used to seeing that it almost normalizes those activities in real life. I'm not saying I did those things, but I could see how it could happen. Good. Okay, just to go through that one more time, I had 3 things in there. The direct answer, yes. Explain, where I talked about normalizing crime. And then example, I talked about a video game, Grand Theft Auto. So a little bit different today. I wanted you to understand I consistently structure my answers the same. If you go back over all my episodes, I do structure and I use my methods that I use in IELTS Plus. So, and you can too. So if you like today's podcast, please like or comment or subscribe, whatever you can do, especially on YouTube. I do check the comments and I reply. I'm a diligent teacher. So also check out my website, www.jax-english.com, to get your free handout. And thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you have a fantastic week and see you next week to discuss economy. Bye-bye.